All
Okay.
right. You're
Good
recording?
morning. Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining Azure Power Lunch today. We have here with us Paresh, and Paresh Sharda will be sharing with us some of the recent Azure updates, and he will also be sharing Azure Site Recovery. Thank you. It's all yours, Paresh.
Thank you, Suraj. Good morning, everyone. I'm Paresh Sharda, TSP for Apps and Infra based in Houston. And let's get started because I think we don't have enough time, actually, frankly speaking, to cover the topic, which is called Azure Site Recovery. Before I go there, let's quickly jump over to updates. And when I say updates, oh man, we had a really busy week considering the Envision and Ignite. There has been so many updates out there. So what I plan to do is cover a few of those critical ones. And if you have noted in my past Power Lunch, I always visit this website and recommend it. I love this site. Basically, it gives me summary of all the updates which I want. So it's called azurenotes.tech. You can always go ahead and create a PowerPoint also based on that, but basically it uses the API to go ahead and bring out all the notes. Okay, somebody is asking me control. Sorry, can't give you right now, but that's fine. Yes, we'll post this in the chat window also. Okay, coming to the quick ones. First, obviously, which is associated to today's. Okay, I think I might have lost my control or what. Is it? Okay. Yeah, fine. So first is obviously with Azure Site Recovery, more and more partners are joining us, which is good. So now the disaster recovery solutions from the leading vendors out in the industry are actually supporting Azure Site Recovery. Basically, you can leverage your existing tool set with those partners, but they will in the backend leverage Azure Site Recovery because they also see the power of Azure Site Recovery. So we have Rockwell and CTW, Rackspace and CTW, sorry, joining the partner who will going to support a managed disaster recovery offering using Azure Site Recovery. That's one. There has been a huge number of updates on networking side, and if this is something you have been following, or if this is something where you had your past pain points, I think this is a very welcome update from them. Specifically, service endpoints. The biggest concern our customer had that some of those past services which we are leveraging have public IPs. I don't want my traffic from VM going out into the internet and accessing those. We had something called private virtual networking earlier, basically, or service tunneling that used to actually connect those public services into the VMs and virtual networks. But now with service endpoint, we will be directly able to kind of basically with simple configuration. It's pretty easy. Just enable a service endpoint to one of your virtual network, and then that virtual network will directly be that public service will be directly accessible to that virtual network, and the traffic will be using the Azure backbone to converge, and it won't go to the internet. We have started off with two services, Azure Storage and Azure SQL. So these are the two major ones right now, and hopefully more and more public services will start joining in. The power of Azure DDoS protection, which we had used to protect our own data centers, Azure as well as Office 365. Some of those learnings and capabilities are now being offered to our customers to protect their virtual network. They were already protected earlier. It's not that they were not protected. It's just that now they will have more insights. They can go and look into the traffic patterns. They can go and look into the actual events that are happening from a DDoS protection perspective. They can additionally obviously go for the layer 7 protection using WAF gateways. So that's another one, major one from the networking side. I will not go through all of them, so please don't worry. I am just trying to quickly go through the important ones. The another major one, network security groups. I know many of us who have been dealing with NSGs will know that it is not that easy to maintain the NSG rules. And considering the number of IPs you have to manage, the number of rules you have to manage, and then you have to copy those to other networks, it can become a bit painful. And that's where lots and lots of announcement has came in, whether it is the name of using service tags for the specific services of Azure, or whether application security groups, where basically you are logically grouping some of those applications and the assets within the group, so that, for example, in this case, you want to allow internet only to web servers on these two ports. So you can create an application security group called web servers, and then you have the service tag of internet, and then you just mention the rule simple that anything which is within this application security group will be allowed internet access on these two ports. As simple as that. Similarly, your app servers, you want to talk it to the on-premise with specific ports and specific protocols, you can actually create another one out here. Here is another example of you want the data servers to access storage. So in that case, you just go ahead and allow. The rest of them you can deny all. So this is a very welcome kind of announcement that this will make the life of network admins really, really easy to manage it out. Not to mention, again, the fastest network available in any public cloud. So we have now VMs which require, yes, Steve, today is ASR. Yes. Well, I'm just covering a few of those updates. So another few more VMs which are actually having 30 Gbps connectivity. So few more networking specific SKUs, VM SKUs who can leverage that level of performance. Another is global virtual network peering. This is another important one where, for example, you had we had virtual network peering, but that was limited to just the same region. So a customer who has virtual networks spanning multiple regions, they had to use site-to-site VPN to do that. But now we are supporting global virtual network peering. It's limited to certain regions right now, and hopefully it will be expanded down the line to all of the regions. A major one from ExpressRoute is you might have known that we had 3 levels of peering: public, Microsoft, and private. We are now merging them, and then now we are actually, I guess, I don't remember the name of it, the new one, but basically 2 of those, the Microsoft and the public one, are actually combined together as a single peering. Fine. I think we have 2 more minutes. Let me. So these were more from the networking side of it. Few more VM sizes. Specifically, this is very important for databases where your licenses are based on number of cores, right? So we had customers who said that yes, my database machine needs a huge amount of memory, but then I don't need that much amount of cores because they are not CPU intensive. So that's where we are actually introducing new VM SKUs of those specific high memory VMs, which has less number of SKUs. So rather than having 32 virtual CPUs, you are having 16 virtual CPUs or 4 CPUs. Now think of your licensing. Oracle, for example, you can definitely save almost half of it if your workloads are not requiring that stuff, right? All right, so this was global VNet peering. Again, I think, yeah, and then we had few more updates on the monitoring side. In the Azure Monitor, we had a new interface. So if you had not gone through it, you might want to go ahead and look into it. We have a public preview going on right now for the Azure Monitor, so you can even check those ones. Okay, so these are very quick ones. I know I went real fast, and again, there are a few more. If you can go through each one of them or some of those which are your interest area, just let me know. If you have any queries on any of the update, do let us know. We should be able to help you out there. Okay, so this was my very quick walkthrough of the updates. Suraj, if you want to add anything else which I might have missed, you can go ahead and do that. Or else we can start with the ASR session.
Yeah, I think we are good. You can go ahead and get started.
Perfect. Okay. So now I don't have view to the chat screen, so hopefully just ping me if you feel the questions require a response right now. Okay. So Azure Site Recovery, what basically it is disaster recovery as a service, as the title states. So what are the challenges it actually helps you solve? So simple ones. The major one is the disaster recovery. We all know it's critical. It's very important to have the DR strategy for your applications, for your mission critical workloads. But then doing that is not that easy. One, obviously, the environments are complex. The dependencies across various components, application components, as well as infrastructure components are not that straightforward. So replicating it into a different site is always a challenge. Second, when you do this complex recovery, obviously the recovery times are more. It takes longer time to actually come out with the, if your recovery or disaster environment, recovery environment is not up and running all the time, bringing it up in a sequence and making it possible, making it readily available takes a lot of time, and which obviously means loss of revenue. Uh, Testing of DR policies. Now that's very critical. We have both regulatory as well as corporate compliance requirements where we need to test the DR plans and ensure that they are as effective as they are planned to be. But doing that many times is disruptive because obviously your production workloads are going on. How can you test it out while you're either it has to be on a weekend or not? If not, even if it is on weekends, there are chances that there are businesses running on with live data. How do you handle all of that? So there are obviously disruption that happens to those production workloads. And then it definitely can become costly if you want to kind of just have an always on secondary environment, which basically, so obviously you're not utilizing it, lots and lots of CPU compute as well as money goes in to keep it running. So how about an environment or a DR solution which obviously covers most of the platforms? So whether it is Linux, whether it is Windows, whether it is Linux on your machines, on physical hardware, or it is on your virtual VMware environment, or it is on virtual Hyper-V environment, whether it is in Azure, whether it is in one of your data center, or it is in a co-location, or in some cases, whether it is in our other clouds also. How about connecting all of them? How about a DR solution which actually is certified by many of the applications like SAP, like Oracle, or even for Windows applications, so that the DR is app consistent. When I say application consistent, we guarantee that an application when goes down in one site and it is replicated to another site, we will be in a state where the application is consistent and you will be able to run it out without any data loss or data corruption. Class leading RPOs and RTOs. So we don't have specific numbers published because those numbers cannot be published considering the varied levels of VMs, network, and complexity involved. We cannot have a single number, but we can say minutes and seconds. Okay, and how we will be able to test your DRs without even actually impacting your production workload. So that's the beauty of the solution. Without even doing so, you can test your DR plans without that. And obviously you can always protect the critical and lower tier application at lower cost because all you have to pay is for storage and a bit of networking, but nothing beyond that. When it comes to business continuity, I have seen few customers and few conversations where people keep on overlapping some of those concepts. So I want to ensure that we need all of three. There's not that if I have ASR, I don't need backup, or if I have backup, I don't need high availability, because each one solves a different purpose. So I want to ensure that everybody out here knows that high availability is basically if one goes down, the other is always up and running, and there you go. Without any delays, your second instance becomes primary. Disaster recovery is in case both of those sites, actually the primary site entirely goes down, like in case of natural disasters or a man-made error, and the backup is to protect your data against corruption. So in either of this case, you are not protected of corruption. If somebody makes data wrong, it would be wrong in secondary site also. But in this case, you can always go back in time and that can get it corrected. With that, single slide on what Azure Site Recovery is, I will try to cover. So it's basically any site to Azure, from Azure to another Azure, or from one site to another site. So obviously there are workloads which have to run on-premise only, and it might not make sense to run it on cloud, both from a business perspective or financial perspective or performance perspective. So in those cases, we support all three scenarios. We support VMware, Hyper-V as well as physical. So it doesn't matter which hypervisor you are using or whether you are not using a hypervisor, which OS you are running. Obviously, we cannot support all of the OS right away because we have so many OSs out there. There's a support matrix and a link which would be provided at the end of the session, which shows you what VMs, what kernel levels for those specific VMs, Linux in case of Linux, are supported. Even for Hyper-V or Windows VMs, what level of support is available. So we support all of them, and we can move from one Hyper-V to another Hyper-V or from a physical to VMware and then back. So you have lots and lots of options when it comes to Azure Site Recovery, and it's a complete disaster recovery solution. I also forgot to mention the other public clouds, so you can get disaster recovery for them. The benefits, we automated VM level replication. So this happens at the hypervisor level actually. So you can get the VM replication. We have RP of seconds and RT of minutes. So this is something to be very important in case your disaster recovery requires to have less times, disaster time. So this is very important. No impact DR drills with test over. So you can basically go ahead and do a DR drill with the test failover without impacting your production environment, and once everything is done, you can just clean up your test environment. Both you can do planned and unplanned failovers. So you can obviously plan the entire orchestration in case, let's say, you want to do some physical work out in your primary site, you can do that. So both planned and unplanned failover. This is also used in case of migration, where somebody is actually trying to migrate something on their existing workload to Azure. They can actually do basically a planned failover. You can orchestrate the entire recovery plan. So basically you can go ahead and tell them, okay, first bring out this VMs, first set up this network interfaces, assign this public IPs, do this DNS changes or whatever you require, bring up the database server, then bring up the application servers, apply the NSG rules. So pretty much anything you can do with infrastructure as IaaS in Azure, you can actually code out everything. In case something cannot be automated, you can always specify even manual instructions how it has to be recovered. So even that is done. And this is good. Yes, there was something failed and you moved it to somebody into a secondary site. But how about once the primary site is up, how quickly you can come back? So that's very important. So failback support. So we can do that also. And you can always do on-demand test copies. So this is kind of a secondary benefit of using ASR, that you always can create a secondary copy of your production workloads for your QA and testing purpose. All right. As I mentioned, these are the scenarios. I will not go in details right now. The only thing I wanted to highlight here is app consistency, where we support many leading applications, SharePoint, SAP, and Oracle, and they are consistent. So basically, they are certified to be consistent there. Okay. All right, and then let me see if we have anything. Yeah, one more benefit. So when you are doing a migration to Azure from, let's say, on-premise, you always has an additional benefit of Azure hybrid usage benefit, basically reducing your overall Azure cost by over 40-50% if you are using Windows licenses out there. So that's one thing you want to do. This is just an example of basically a application, how it could be done. Let's say if it is using SQL servers as their DB tier. So you can always have SQL Server availability group, which will be replicating the SQL over your secondary site. Your app tier and web tier can use ASR replication, and your AD can use AD as well as ASR replication. So obviously Azure Site Recovery provides replication to all sort of workloads, but then there are certain cases based on the workloads, you might have additional options to consider in your disaster recovery. Okay, so just be mindful of that. This is the site recovery application support, which I mentioned earlier. So like SQL Server, System Center, Dynamics, Exchange, SharePoint, SAP. So we are able to do that. And for SE customers, there's no additional license charge for the first party workloads. Quick considerations before I jump into demo. Actually, let me do one thing. Let me jump into the demo first, and then I can always come back to slides very quickly. Okay, so what you need to do when it comes to replication or setting up ASR, there's a very nice documentation out there, which obviously you can leverage. The Azure Site Recovery's homepage, and then there's like step-by-step how to and tutorials, which will tell you what you want to, like, are you replicating Azure VMs from one location to another? Are you replicating VMware, or are you migrating to Azure's? Conceptual architectures, what needs to be done. Capacity planning, this is very important, specifically in case of VMware, let's say, or even for Hyper-V. So when you are doing capacity planning, where did it go? Yeah, sorry. So there's a tool called Deployment Planner for VMware replication. So it's a nice tool which will actually go ahead, kind of scan your existing VMware environment and tell you what your target environment might look like in Azure, what VM SKUs are required based on the current. So this is another important one. You might want to look into it. All right. And then we have how to guides of how exactly you have to do all of that. We're doing the disaster recovery, configuring it, failing over, failing back, and even doing some additional automation out there. So this is a tons of information out there which you could easily leverage, and these are really easy step-by-step tutorials which you can follow. All right. But with having said that, what you need first to start with site recovery is obviously a site recovery vault or an Azure ASR vault. So this is what I did first. Is basically I created a vault before this session today, and I ensured that this vault is not in the same region where my source IPs are or source VMs are, because obviously you don't want the vault to be in the same disaster region. So I created in a different region out there, and I'll show you how my resource group are right now. So this is my source resource group. I think it's in West US too, and I got few VMs out there. For time being, we will use CentOS VM1, which is out here. So you could see here is my VM CentOS VM1, which is running out in with this public IP address in West US 2 location. What I could quickly do here from here onwards is I can actually go ahead, look into my vault. I have, if you want to add new VMs to be replication, the step-by-step process is, okay, where is the source, whether it is on Azure or whether it is on premise. You can click on that. If your source location is on premise, then it will actually ask you what is the source location of it, basically, and whether it is a VMware or a Hyper-V or a physical, and then you can follow all the steps. For today's demo, because we have enough time, less time, I am just showing you what it might look like. So I have said it is in West US2 location, Azure Resource Manager, deployment model is this, and I am using this resource group, and then it will then check in those resource group whether any of the VMs are available which can be replicated. Now obviously I only had two of them, one of which I already replicated, the other one I cannot replicate because it is using a SKU which is not available in my target region. That's the reason it's grayed out. So this is one thing you have to be confirmed of. Second thing, this VM is using managed disk. Currently managed disk are not supported by ASR. I hope we will have some updates from the product group soon. I don't have a timeline right now, but basically the managed disk are not being supported. So if your VMs are using managed disk, that is something you have to take a note of, that those won't be replicated right now with ASR. All right. Basically, once you select the VM, and then you can go ahead and configure it. Basically, which target, what resource group it has to go through, what is the virtual network it might go through, and all other. What is the storage account it should use for their disk? What is the storage account it can use for the caching of it? Okay, so that's once you have done that, that item will be available in your replicated item here, and then it will start a job to start installing the ASR agent on that VM, and then it will start configuring all the other stuff, basically synchronizing and then replicating it. Once everything is done, it takes a while initially. The status will become protected out here. All right. So that's when you will be sure that this VM is protected. Now, if you want to test out whether how I can, whether this is how I can see whether this VM is protected or not. So let me do one thing. Let me first open a terminal very quickly. I obviously cannot show you RTOs and RPOs within 20 minutes right now because it might not work. So this is the VM. If you see this site, right? That's where is it? Just a sec. Sorry, guys. I'm just trying to see find the VM public IPs. I think okay, we can show it from here. CentOS VM1. Yeah, so 52 dot something is the public IP, and that's what I have here, 52 dot something. So let me restart a session here for that. Let's wait for it to log in. So you basically can see that I'm already logged in out here, and then maybe I have a folder called secret. I can look into that, and so it's running up there. It's a CentOS. What I can then do is, if I want to test whether my recovery is working correctly or not, I can actually go to the recovery vault and then do a test failover. So when you do a test failover, basically what it does, it actually goes ahead and creates a copy of VM in your target location. Ideally, it is recommended you don't use the virtual network, which is your actual target environment or secondary environment, because obviously while you're testing, if something happens to your primary, your secondary is already being used by you for your test. So it's always advised that you have a different virtual network also, just for testing purpose. But for time being, I'm using the one which actually is the target out here. And then you can always select what you want to go with, the lowest RPO or the lowest RTO. So you can see here that what's the last time. So my lowest RTO recovery time objective is 11:21. So if I make any changes right now and then click on this, those changes won't be available in the destination, because that's the last time of changes which have been synchronized. So I just started the test failover. It might take a while for it. So while it is doing that, let's see what does so what it does. It does some prerequisite checks. It has started creating a test virtual machine in the and then it will start preparing that virtual machine, and then it will start the virtual machine. So these are basic steps, and we can just take a note of the time that we started at 11:28. Oh, we only have a few more seconds left. All right. So I think we might have to wait for that. And once it is available, you might see that in my recovery plan, what I have done is I have actually associated a public IP to a NIC in that virtual network, which is associated with this test VM. So as soon as that test VM comes up in the target site, we will be able to actually SSH into that and do our testing without actually impacting your public endpoint. Okay. Let's just see if we can find something very quickly to show you there. Okay, by the time that is happening, one thing I always like to show is the recovery plan, because that's where very important to understand what can be done, what cannot be done. And I have a very simple recovery plan because we had a simple demo, but you could see that this is my test recovery plan, and you can have multiple recovery plans and associate those recovery plans based on, let's say, if it is just a fire drill or a disaster drill, or is it actually a manual recovery you are trying to do. So based on that, you can create this thing. Or is it just a creation of a copy just for your QA environment? You can have a recovery plan dedicated for that, right? I think we are going above time, so I'm sorry, I might have to stop very quickly, but if you have any questions, I might want to take those right now while we are waiting for the test site to come up. Yes, so after you fail over, you need to okay, obviously to have when you fail over, there you have options whether you want to have a new IPs or the same IPs. In some cases, if the applications require the same IPs, you might want to configure it that way. But obviously, you want to ensure that the source location IPs are not accessible or basically not addressable, because you can have lead into IP conflict. You can definitely leverage Traffic Manager, Azure Traffic Manager, to do that DNS routing. So that and most of the time customers do use Azure Traffic Manager along with Azure Site Recovery to get the best recovery times out there. Perfect, Rob. So here is a recovery plan. Like you can actually go ahead and click on groups, add additional actions, add automation scripts, right? A pre-action and a post-action. And when you do that, you actually can specify playbook. So okay, so we got a message that the CentOS VM test failover has been completed. This brings me to my terminal. I'm trying to reconnect. I can show you also in the, let's see, hopefully this is all up and running and we should be able to connect. Meanwhile, let's see the target environment and see what has happened there after we created. So here is my target environment, which was created by ASR, the target resource group. And you could see there's a CentOS VM here, one here also with a public IP. And you would be able to actually go ahead and see, okay, the public IP is correct. So if I go back, okay, it still stopped. It's saying, so I might have to, okay, now it's up. So I can actually log in here. So now you see I have my source machine, which is a production machine, while I have a source machine here with a test machine, which I am doing exact copy of my source machine based on the time period, the RTO time we had there. Now what I can quickly do is, let me show you, maybe I think I did test it out. Yeah, so in my production I made few changes where I'm just creating few copies of few tracks. And in my test environment, I can go ahead and see I only have one file here. So basically you have production and your test environment running together. You can do certain testing. If all is good and done, you are able to test your disaster plan. Everything is fine. Let's now go ahead. It's time to wrap it up. And that's where you can go back here, go to your VM, replicated items, go to that VM, and then you can actually go ahead and clean up test flavors so that after your testing, yes, whatever notes you want to put up, testing is complete, delete the test failover machine, and you can go ahead and delete it. Yes, we have to pre-build it. Yeah, Steve, and thanks, Rob, for answering all of that. That's correct, because you have to kind of think of the target environment as whatever blueprint you want for your application, whatever subnets you want, whatever virtual networks you want, IPs, private IPs you want, everything has to be configured first, so that when you fail over, what ASR does is basically data replications of VM, right? So VMs keeps on getting replicated, the disks get prepared in your target environment, and when the actual failover or a test failover happens, it shuts down the target location or the source location, moves the delta changes into the target location, and then starts up the new VMs, right? So, and when it starts up, it follows the recovery plan and then starts assigning IPs to VMs, to the NICs, associate those NICs to those virtual networks and the VMs, and then that's how your recovery plan works. You can also sequence out based on the groups which VMs have to come first, which VMs have to come later on, which have to be addressable, which do not have to be addressable. All right. I think that brings to learn 34. So if we have any more questions, I'm happy to say. I'll not continue with my slides anymore, but if you guys have any more questions, do let me know.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much, Paresh. I don't think so. We have any more questions in the chat window. Thank you everyone for joining this session. We will be posting the recording and the slide deck on our channel 9 link that I posted here. Also, we request you to join our Twitter feed so that we can update you with the upcoming session information. At this point, that is the best way for us to provide you an update on the upcoming sessions. All right. Thank